Hi everyone, welcome back to Learn With Me. I'm Deborah Hanson. Today we're going to look at AB Psychology 5.3, Explaining and Classifying Psychological Disorders. In this video, I am only going to be talking about the third CED question. The other two are in separate videos and you can find those on my channel. So before we get started, thank you so much everybody who's liked and subscribed to the channel. It really helps me a lot and I so appreciate it. I love all the comments and emails everybody's been sending, great suggestions and really good feedback. So thank you so much. Keep them coming. It's really helpful. So as you can see on this slide, these are the key terms for 5.3. for all three CED questions. And I always do the key terms on a separate video with definitions and examples so that you can learn them and apply them on test day. As mentioned earlier, we're going to go through question number 3 of the CED for 5.3, and it is explain how interaction models define psychological disorders. I'm going to go through all the essential knowledge you need to know to answer that question. So let's just look at the overview of interaction models. The definition is interaction models explain psychological disorders as the result of multiple interconnected factors rather than a single cause. The two models we're going to break down are Biopsychosocial Model and Diathesis-Stress Model. So let's start by discussing one of the most comprehensive ways to understand psychological disorders, the Biopsychosocial Model. This approach recognizes that mental health is influenced by multiple factors: biology, psychology, and socioculture. So the Biopsychosocial Model suggests that mental health disorders don't just have one cause. Instead, they result from the interaction of biological, psychological, and sociocultural influences. So here's the key idea. Instead of looking at mental disorders from just one perspective, like biology or environment, this model combines multiple factors to get the full picture. Some of the influential thinkers for this model are George Engel. He developed the biopsychosocial model to bridge the gap between medical and psychological approaches. So now let's explore the three major components of this model. So according to the biopsychosocial model, psychological disorders are caused by a mix of three factors. First, the biological factor. These include genetics, neurotransmitters, brain structures, and physical health. For example, some people might have a genetic predisposition to depression because of low serotonin levels. The next one is psychological factors. These include thought patterns, emotional regulation, and coping mechanisms. For example, someone with negative thought patterns may struggle with persistent feelings of hopelessness. The next one, or last one, sociocultural factors. These include family dynamics, socioeconomic status, cultural norms, and social expectations. For example, lack of social support or financial stress can increase the risk of mental health struggles. So here's an example. Let's take depression as an example. According to Biopsychosocial Model, depression might be caused by a genetic predisposition to low serotonin levels, that's your biological, persistent negative thinking patterns, that's your psychological, a lack of social support or financial stress, there's your sociocultural. All of these three factors interact, making it important to look at the big picture when diagnosing and treating mental health conditions. The biopsychosocial model helps us see the mental health is complex and multidimensional. Effective treatment should address biological, psychological, and sociocultural factors all together, rather than just one piece of that puzzle. Next, we're going to look at the Diathesis-Stress Model, which explains how genetic vulnerability and environmental stressors interact to cause psychological disorders. The Diathesis-Stress Model suggests that psychological disorders don't develop just from one cause. Instead, they result from a combination of two key factors. First, diathesis. That's the vulnerability, a genetic predisposition or biological weakness that makes a person more susceptible to a disorder. And then stress, life events or environmental pressures that trigger the disorder in someone who is already vulnerable. So think of it as seed and soil. The genetic predisposition is the seed, but the disorder only grows if the environment provides the right or wrong conditions. So let's break it down a little further with an example. Suppose a person has a family history of schizophrenia. That's their genetic diathesis. However, not everyone with this genetic risk develops the disorder. What makes the difference? Environmental stressors. So for example, diathesis, that's your vulnerability, right? That's the person inherits a genetic predisposition to schizophrenia. Then you have your stress, your trigger. They experience a traumatic event, prolonged stress, or substance abuse, which activates the disorder. So, for example, a person might have genetic risk for schizophrenia, but they only develop the symptoms after experiencing extreme stress, like a traumatic life event or drug abuse. This model helps explain why not everyone with a genetic predisposition develops the disorder. The Diathesis-Stress Model shows that mental health conditions are not just genetic or environmental, they're both. This means that reducing stress and building resilience can lower risk of developing disorders, even in people with genetic vulnerabilities. So on this slide, I just made a little chart comparing both of them, the focus, the key idea, and the example in the disorder, just to help you see them side by side and the key items that you need to know for each of these models. Okay, so let's talk about interaction models in psychology, frameworks that explain how multiple factors work together to influence mental health. These models are crucial for understanding, diagnosing, and treating psychological disorders effectively. So why do interaction models matter? Unlike traditional perspectives that focus on just one cause, these models look at how biological, psychological, and sociocultural factors combine to shape mental health. This holistic approach has several benefits. First, it's the holistic understanding. Disorders are complex and influenced by multiple factors, not just one. It improves treatment approaches because by considering all contributing factors, psychologists can develop more effective tailored treatments. And lastly, reducing stigma. These models show that disorders are not just due to personal weakness, but a combination of genetic, cognitive, and social influences. So understanding mental health through interaction models helps us see the big picture rather than just focusing on one aspect of the disorder. Let's take a real-life example to see how interaction models shape mental health treatments. So first of all, imagine someone dealing with depression. How would different approaches help? Let's look at cognitive therapy. This helps address negative thought patterns that contribute to depression. Next, medication. Adjusts neurotransmitter imbalances that may cause low mood. And last, social support. Involves family and friends, therapy groups. This improves emotional well-being. So, for example, a psychologist using an interaction model wouldn't just prescribe medication. They might also recommend cognitive therapy to reframe thoughts, social support to encourage connection. So this comprehensive approach increases the chances of recovery. Interaction models provide a complete understanding of mental health, allowing for personalized treatments that address biological, psychological, and social factors all together. This approach improves outcomes and reduces the stigma surrounding mental health disorders. Okay, so let's all pull that all together now. So the key focus areas: understand the components of both models and how they interact, be able to apply these models to specific psychological disorders, and use examples to illustrate the interplay of factors in both models. Some missteps to avoid: overlooking the role of sociocultural factors in the biopsychosocial model, and forgetting that the Diathesis-Stress Model emphasizes genetic predisposition combined with stressors. Okay, and that's the essential knowledge you need to know for CED question number 3. Explain how interaction models define psychological disorders. If you found that helpful, please hit that like and subscribe button for me and leave me some comments. I am loving the comments and the emails. Thank you so much. I love all the suggestions also. So if you want to see some special videos about different sections of the test, or if you want review videos, anything you need, let me know so I can try and make those videos for you to help you get that 5 on the exam. Thanks so much for listening. See you next time.